That would be the aforementioned Ralph Nader. Ralph, it's been a few years since we shared plane flights between Phoenix and Washington. Welcome to America's Forum.
Thank you very much.
And we appreciate you Skyping in. And let's begin, since any good debate or discussion has to begin with a definition of terms. Ralph, define for us what you mean by the term corporate state.
It's big business controlling Washington. Almost every department and agency, the most outside powerful lobby or corporate lobbyists, whether it's Department of Interior, Agriculture, Treasury, Department of Defense, a lot of the regulatory agencies like FDA, Food and Drug Administration, and they put their appointees, their ex-executives in high positions and get them through a confirmatory process in the Senate. That is what Franklin Delano Roosevelt warned about in a message to Congress in 1938, excuse me, when he said, whenever government is controlled by private economic power, that's fascism.
Well, that's a mighty big jump to go from FDR and fascism to the current state. But let's talk now more about the current state of the body politic in the United States. I'm imagining that you and Tom DeLay didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, at least since I was there as part of the House Republican Conference back in the day. But one thing Tom DeLay said that I think you might agree with, he said, forget the political spectrum as being linear. That instead what we have in the United States is something that is more circular, that when it comes to individual rights and issues dealing with the concentration and power, the left and the right eventually merge on some of these issues, and that's what you seem to be suggesting in this book, an emerging left-right alliance, which would have the power to dismantle the corporate government state. Yeah, what evidence of that do you see emerging now electorally and in terms of public policy?
Oh, it's overwhelming. Ron Paul, for example, and Rand Paul, now senator, they use the word corporatist all the time. And what they really mean by corporatism is crony capitalism. On the left, we call it corporate welfare. So you have a left-right alliance. First, it starts with public opinion all over the country, verbally. They agree verbally that they don't like bailouts of Wall Street. They don't see the value of Wall Street manhandling Main Street. They don't like the restrictions on civil liberties in the Patriot Act. That's a big one. A big left-right alliance verbally is to break up the big New York banks that are considered too big to fail and are setting us up with their derivative speculations, et cetera, for another Wall Street crash on the economy. They don't like the sovereignty shredding, job destroying corporate trade agreements, NAFTA and World Trade Organization, and the forthcoming one. And now they're coming together more and more. Why don't we take another look on the war on drugs? Does it really make sense to put teenagers away for 10, 20 years or more if they're caught with a little marijuana? And those convergences that I just mentioned at the end, they're actually passing legislation in one state after another, over a dozen. Juvenile justice reform, starting to look at the war on drugs. On trade, the Pacific Trade Agreement, once it's signed by President Obama, and he sends it to the Congress on a fast-track, no amendment permitted procedure, that's going to be stopped in defiance of Speaker Boehner and Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi by a left-right coalition in the House of Representatives. So it's happening everywhere. You even see it in the most unlikely places. The Koch brothers are putting money into state legislators to put a surtax on solar panels on homes. And they're not winning because in those state legislators, you got Republicans and Democrats who are defying the oil and gas industry and saying, what are you trying to do? We want net metering and we want solar energy to prosper with all the jobs that are involved. Against commercialization of childhood, that comes in over 95%. The parents are being bypassed and undermined in their parental authority by crass marketeers selling 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old bad food, junk drink, violent programming. It's just outrageous. Something that was completely taboo when I was growing up, apart from bubble gum. Companies did not direct market with all the clever stratagems to get these kids to nag their parents mercilessly to buy this damaging products.
Well, there's a lot more opportunity, Mr. Nader, for those advertisers to do that with a lot more screens these days. But I wanted to kind of talk about your book a little bit more because it seems to cut through the argument we hear so much from the right that big government is in the way of business. And in fact, what you're saying, there's a collusion here between big government and big business. But who really is the biggest loser? Is it the consumer? Is it the parents you talked about? Who's losing out the most from this?
Well, the reason why there's a left-right alliance, and it starts verbally, and the more it becomes demonstrative with petitions and showers of emails left-right on members of Congress or marches or demonstrations, is because they hurt as consumers, they're gouged, they're penalized, charges, shoddiness, bad side effects of drugs not disclosed, medicines, you name it, bank manipulation, a foreclosure, a crisis, a robo signing, all that. Then as taxpayers, they're hit because who pays for all this corporate welfare? Who pays for the bailout of Wall Street while the bosses get away from any prosecution and laugh all the way to their banks?
And that might be true, but we still have, this still is America, and we still have the option of choice. Why don't more people vote with their pocketbooks then and their wallets on these issues? Because there is a lot of this information out there. There's your book and other sources as well that has talked about what's going on here. Why don't we see more Americans, boycotting these companies that are participating in these activities you discuss?
It's growing. One of the areas of convergence is support for local businesses, like farmer to consumer market instead of agribusiness, like community banks, credit unions instead of the giant banks, like local renewable energy instead of ExxonMobil, like community health clinics with emphasis on prevention instead of all these medical shenanigans that are going on. So this is a displacement subeconomy that's now reached tens of billions of dollars and is growing rapidly. Your point is well taken, though. There's such discouragement among people that they're just beginning to realize if they move to try to get something done as liberals, they think they're not going to win. The Congress is in the pocket of big business and so on. If the conservatives move, then they say, well, they can't win by themselves. But when they lock arms, then they have a morale boost. Then they see that the corporatists in Congress and in Wall Street are terrified of left-right alliances. You can see it with the NSA vote against their own leaders in the House last year that almost blocked the NSA in the House legislation from dragnet snooping. You see it coming in against the intervention in Syria. No, not another war in the Middle East. We're done with that. Millions of emails coming in 100 to 1 into members of Congress, and they conceded. So you can see that when there's a rumble from the people, that it comes from the left and right, it really is unstoppable. So people have got to get a sense of their own power when they combine that way and overcome the kind of withdrawal and cynicism and powerlessness that you were alluding to.
Let me add a wrinkle to this discussion of politics and policy, Ralph, specifically presidential politics. We should note for the record that, if memory serves, at least on 2 occasions, you have run for president as the nominee of the Green Party. Now, as we were just having a discussion here, the name Rand Paul emerged. There is this synergy on the right of a libertarian Republican fusion. You saw Senator Paul get a standing ovation at Berkeley, something that rarely happens for Republicans. 2 questions. Do you believe the momentum, presidentially speaking, is a type of Rand Paul candidacy? And number 2, were Mr. Paul to become the nominee of the Republican Party, might you make history by supporting a Republican for president?
No, I can't do that. But Rand Paul is broadening his base by appealing to a left-right on the Patriot Act restrictions, invasion of privacy, spoken on that. Against corporate welfare or crony capitalism, he's spoken on that. Against wars of empire abroad and NSA snooping, he's certainly spoken on that in the 13-hour performance on the Senate floor. On health and safety legislation, we part company. He doesn't like that. I think that's the way to save lives, auto safety, for example, drug medicine testing, and so on. He doesn't like full Medicare for all, which was proposed first by Harry Truman. Everybody in, nobody out. Public insurance, private delivery of health care.
So in other words, we can expect another Nader candidacy for president in 2016.
No, hardly. But here's my prediction, and I'll make it first on your show.
Okay.
You can see in Tuesday's primaries that the established corporatist Republicans have seriously broken and are dedicated to smashing the Tea Party challengers and the Tea Partiers last. They've had enough of that. It's only the Tea Party in the last 4 years that brought the Republican Party a new source of energy. Now they're turning on the Tea Party.
And it's something that concerns a lot of people, including me. Ralph, we're up against the clock. Your new book is Unstoppable. We're sorry to have to stop the discussion, but we look forward to visiting with you again very soon here on America's Forum. Thanks very much for your time. So, is Ralph Nader right? Tweet us your comments. We'd love to hear from you at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum.